Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rekah, Hakwadash, Barakatah. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and peace and salutations to Yakim out there pushing this word and truth. This is the Brother I with another video, and I'm going to start it off with my first article on antiwar.com, and the title reads, Turkey threatens to attack Syrian town held by U.S. troops. Erdogan demands U.S. stop arming Kurds. Having captured Afrin over the weekend, Turkey isn't committing yet to exactly where they'll be attacking next in northern Syria. Manbij, however, was long expected to be a target, and Turkish officials are still not disavowing that. Manbij is the next closest Kurdish-held target for Turkey, but is potentially hugely complicated. That's because the U.S. has ground troops in Manbij, and they were put there specifically to try to dissuade Turkey from attacking the city. Manbij was an ISIS-held city, but fell to the Kurdish YPG in a bloody U.S.-backed offensive. Turkey claimed at the time the Kurds couldn't be allowed to keep Manbij on the west shore of the Euphrates because it is Turkish policy that Syrian Kurds must all be east of the river. Turkish President Erdogan is picking up the rhetoric against the U.S. for supporting the YPG once again in recent days, demanding the U.S. respect Turkey and stop trying to deceive them by backing Kurdish terrorists. Pentagon officials have warned before that U.S. troops would defend themselves if Manbij is attacked. The danger is that in attacking the city, nominally to fight the Kurds, Turkey could get into a direct fight with the U.S. That's a battle neither nation wants, and one just weeks ago the two sides agreed to avoid. Still, Turkey's next target is likely to be some Kurdish territory with U.S. forces inside, and it may just be a question of which one. That brings me to Joel chapter 3 verse 10. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. Which you're seeing Turkey, which is weak compared to the U.S. saying they are strong by threatening to attack Syrian cities with U.S. troops in them, and who knows what that could lead to. That could be what pops off this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in that Middle East area. You've also got other things going on, like Russia threatening to retaliate against the U.S. if they do another airstrike on Syria, and you've got Israel doing its claims against attacking Syria and Iran. We're just a hair trigger away from things popping off. But back with Turkey, a main reason they're bucking up against the U.S. is because, as it says here, it's a Turkish policy that Syrian Kurds must all be east of the river. If we look at a map of the Middle East, you'll see that east of the river keeps them in Syria, and west of that river is in Turkey. And Turkey has a substantial number of Kurds in their country, and they don't want the Kurds in Turkey to see the Kurds in Syria start to form their own state, because they believe that the Kurds in Turkey would get ideas of revolution and try to do a similar thing, which would lead to a civil war in Turkey and destabilize it, which is something they wouldn't want obviously. But that puts them against the U.S. because the U.S. wants the Kurds to have their own state in Syria, because they want to balkanize Syria to weaken Syria so it won't be a strong ally to Iran and won't pose a threat to Israel. So you can see how they're bucking up against each other. And this could be one of the reasons why the U.S. tried to overthrow the Turkish President Erdogan back in the summer 2016, which has just further alienated Turkey from the U.S. and has pushed them more to the Russian camp, which behind the scenes, they're pretty strong allies, but out in public, Turkey's trying to keep up that veneer of being a U.S. ally. And I'm going to go to Ezekiel 38, start at verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And we know Gog is Russia today. We jump down to verse 5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Gomer's Turkey, who's becoming one of these allies that's going to fight against the U.S. in World War III on the Russian side. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, which we're seeing Russia getting prepared, and we're seeing Turkey getting prepared with threatening to attack Syrian towns with U.S. troops in them. Thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And we've seen in the past that Russia has been a guard to Turkey, Iran, and Syria when it comes to the U.S. getting into conflict with them. So things just keep heating up out there, and with each passing day, we're getting closer and closer to getting out of this captivity. And I'm going to go to an article to talk a little bit about that coup that tried to overthrow the Turkish president Recep Erdogan. I think it's Tayyip, or they'll say his name in this article, but this is on the New York Times, and it reads, Turks can agree on one thing, U.S. was behind failed coup. How the coup attempt has strained U.S.-Turkey relations. A Turkish newspaper reported that an American academic and former State Department official had helped orchestrate a violent conspiracy to topple the Turkish government from a fancy hotel on an island of the Sea of Marmara near Istanbul. The same newspaper, in a front-page headline, flat out said the United States has tried to assassinate President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on the night of the failed coup. Salaki brothers. When another pro-government newspaper asked Turks in a recent poll conducted on Twitter which part of the United States government had supported the coup plotters, the CIA came in first with 69%, and the White House was a distant second with 20%. These people around the world know the U.S.'s game plan when it comes to toppling other governments. It's just these dildo head Americans over here that don't understand anything. They still think it's like Rocky IV, where you had Rocky versus that Russian, and Rocky was the good guy, and that America could do no wrong. These conspiracy theories are not the product of a few cranks on the fringes of Turkish society. Turkey may be a deeply polarized country, but one thing Turks across all segments of society, Islamists, secular people, liberals, nationalists, seem to have come together on is that the United States was somehow wrapped up in a failed coup, either directly or simply because the man widely suspected to be the leader of the conspiracy, the Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen, lives in exile in the United States. Whenever something shocking and horrific happens in Turkey, the reflex is conspiracy, said Akan Unver, an assistant professor of international relations at Kadir Has University in Istanbul. There's a picture of Erdogan. That response goes back almost a century to the end of World War I, when the West carved up the defeated Ottoman Empire. A Western plan to divide what became modern Turkey failed after Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the country's founder, waged war against the occupiers, but the effort forever imagined in the Turkish psyche a fear of Western conspiracies, and you can see the West is doing the same thing with Turkey today, trying to divide it into different parts. In the case of the failed coup, there is much more at play than fanciful conspiracy theories. Many Turks say, because of the nearly universal conviction that was engineered by Mr. Gulen, who for 16 years has lived in a secluded compound in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. In various interviews and statements, Mr. Gulen has strongly denied involvement in the coup, yet because he lives in the United States, which a lot of overthrown leaders in countries the U.S. was propping up, they always get exiled to the United States for protection. Slovakia. Yet because he lives in the United States and because of other salient facts, including that a former CIA official and a former American ambassador to Turkey helped Mr. Gulen receive a green card, many Turks believe Mr. Gulen is an American agent. From there, it is a short step to the conclusion that the United States conspired with him to bring down the Turkish government. The U.S. is behind the coup, no doubt, said Halun Thailand, 48, a shopkeeper in Istanbul. The deep state of the U.S., the CIA, had a role in it. So even your average Joe in these other countries, they know what the U.S., how the U.S. gets down. The theories have become so rampant that top American officials, including President Obama, have been forced to publicly deny trying to topple the government of a NATO ally. I guess this is that guy, Mr. Gulen. I know there isn't any real evidence yet, but I think it would be naive to say that the U.S. has no involvement in the coup attempt, said Bakir Karabulut, a software developer in Istanbul. The U.S. likes to meddle in our business, and the CIA has supported Gulen for years. They helped him flee from Turkey. Turkey has demanded Mr. Gulen's extradition, saying he commands the Fethullah terror organization to back the claim. The Turkish government has sent a dossier of evidence to the White House, although it has not yet made a formal legal request. A delegation of Turkish lawmakers arrived in the United States this week to press the case, and the two countries appear to be on a collision course over the matter. In an interview on CNN Turk, John R. Bass, the United States ambassador to Turkey, referred to the apparent involvement of a large number of Mr. Gulen's supporters in the coup plot. Analysts are doubtful Turkey will be able to provide evidence for extradition that will hold up in an American court. Turks, in their exasperation that the United States has not turned over Mr. Gulen, have made this analogy. What if Turkey in 2001 had harbored Osama bin Laden? Given the widespread sentiment that Mr. Gulen was behind the coup, a failure to extradite him would probably provoke a popular backlash in Turkey against the United States, and would confirm for many that Americans had conspired against Turkey, which they have. They got a lot of evidence for, and as I said, these other countries know how the U.S. gets down, and now you see with the first article I read that Turkey's willing to attack a Syrian city with U.S. troops in it. That brings me to Obadiah 1 and 7. Well, just Obadiah 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. And Turkey was an ally of the U.S. for a while, but with the Kurdish question and that coup, Turkey's gone over to the Russian camp, even though behind the scenes they're keeping that under wraps behind the scenes and still trying to keep up that veneer of being an ally of the U.S. and prevailed against thee, which they will when they go to war with Russia against the U.S. in the battle of in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and also shoot some nukes over to the U.S. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So as you can see, the U.S. is just losing allies with each passing day because all these countries are learning that who that son of perdition is, who these American Edomites are, the devil, that great Satan that's going to come down in great wrath on the world because he has but a short time. I'm going to close it off with a quote from Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State to Richard Nixon. You should look him up. That was a pretty evil man. To be an enemy of America can be dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal, which Turkey is learning. So with this video, I hope you brothers were edified. Till next time, Shalom.